So I'm here at Wichita, Kansas with Jason Falls.
Yep.
Watching the spittle fall from my mouth. We are going to talk real quick, ask him a couple of questions. He just did a great speech on his new book, No Bullshit, Social Media.
Yes, it is. Even with dramatic pause.
Yes. And so one of the things for businesses that's kind of a challenge is everybody says, we've got Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, and YouTube, but you mentioned a lot of really interesting things tonight about how important it is to customize social media to work for your business. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about choosing the network or the channel where your audience is. And granted, I mean, these networks are big, so part of your audience is going to be on Facebook, part of it's going to be on YouTube, part of them are going to be on Twitter, lots of them are going to be on multiple channels as well. But what you really need to try to do for efficiency's sake, especially if you're a smaller business, is you've got to make sure that you're focused in on the networks that best serve the most people in your audience. You don't want to spend a lot of time on Pinterest if you're not a retail store and you can't put up pictures of your product because it doesn't make any sense for you to be there. You're not going to want to spend a whole lot of time on Twitter if your audience isn't on Twitter, if you don't have an audience that tweets. And the one thing that the follow-up question that most people ask is, well, how do I find out? I find it really comical that some businesses don't know the answer to that. Why don't you turn to your customers and ask them? You could do a quick survey, you could do a quick email survey, or you could just anecdotally ask them as they walk in the door if you've got a brick and mortar location. Hey, are you guys on LinkedIn? Do you guys do anything there? Could we provide something on that network that would be of use to you? I mean, I think that's a good way to look at it.
So that actually brings me to the next question. One spot a lot of businesses get stuck at is what to do after you monitor your brand presence. So you go online and you look at what's happening online. How do you connect the dots between an online brand audit, if you will, and developing a strategy?
Well, that's a really good question. I think the insights that you should be looking for when you're doing your brand audit, when you're seeing what people are saying about you, well, first of all, I would back up a little bit, and when you start your brand audit, look for more than just what people are saying about you. Broaden that scope to look at your competitors, look at your industry, look at what people are talking about in a broad sense around the topics that you have expertise around, because if you do that, then you might see a gap. You might see a hole where someone isn't facilitating content or someone isn't serving the needs of the audience in an ideal way, and that gives you an opportunity to jump in there and do that. So pull back a little bit on your brand audit and do more of a marketplace audit so that you can have more intelligence insights out of that. But then I would also look at when you are seeing opportunities online, one of the things that I like to talk about is proactive monitoring, which is after you do your brand audit and you've got your level set and you start sort of looking at these conversations on a day in, day out basis, look for opportunities where people are saying, I'm interested in buying this. I want this service. I need this. And if you fill that role, jump in, intervene in those conversations. Do it politely. Don't do it as this sort of big brother stalkery kind of thing. Just say, hey, I saw that you tweeted or I saw that you posted this on Facebook. My company happens to provide that service. I'd love to talk to you. You'd be surprised at how easy a sell it becomes for most people.
So you also mentioned social media is free, but you mentioned that time equals money, and time is not free. How do you prioritize what to do in social media?
Sure. Well, I think participating in social media can be free. I mean, obviously, if you're with a bigger company, if you're with an enterprise company, you're going to probably need to spend some money on some tools and some software and whatnot that help you do it. But social media, especially social media monitoring, can be free. Prioritizing what you do and how you do. I think first of all, every social media consultant worth their salt is going to tell you you've got to listen first. You've got to listen to your marketplace. You've got to implement that level of monitoring so that you know what people are saying or maybe what people aren't saying about you online. And then you've got to find ways to facilitate getting those messages out there so that people are talking about you, they are engaging with you, they are taking your brand messages, the things that you want to seed in the marketplace that hopefully drive people to your purchase points and so on and so forth. And so I think the listening comes first because that gives you the opportunity to know what's being said, what's not being said, so that from a strategic communication standpoint, you can find those communities and those opportunities where participating and seeding will have some long-term benefits for you.
Okay, last question. You talked about Greenpeace today, and this was interesting because I couldn't believe I'd never heard of it before. Mr. Splashy Pants.
Mr. Splashy Pants. Yeah.
He was a name that was voted on mainly by the citizens of Reddit.
Yep.
And Greenpeace, rather than running away from this, they embraced it and turned it into a big win for brand awareness.
Absolutely.
What do you think McDonald's should do the same thing with their kind of bash tag that everybody's called it recently, or what would you recommend there?
Well, I think the McDonald's bash tag thing has been blown out of proportion a little bit. I was actually quoted in an article on CBS about it, and my quote was, I think, pretty relevant, but I wasn't necessarily trying to bash it. I think it got blown out of proportion a little bit. I think that people were too quick to say McDonald's made a huge mistake. What McDonald's did was they tried to start a conversation about something that was relevant to their marketing and communications. Unfortunately, they jumped the gun a little bit and started a conversation that was probably meant to try to change a perception in the marketplace. And when you start trying to change a perception, you need to do it on a meta level before you ever drill down to the real-time conversation level and let the public participate in it. If they had started with some branding and commercials and things of that nature that sort of let that, hey, we use farm fresh meats and produce and so on and so forth, and sort of seeded that idea out there with the marketplace first, then allowed their audience to sort of participate in that conversation, may not have had such a bad impact. My point in that article I was quoted on was that the only mistake McDonald's made, and I don't think they made any mistakes in that particular scenario from a social media standpoint, more from a communication strategy standpoint, the mistake that they made was they didn't really have a realistic understanding of what the marketplace thought about them before they allowed the marketplace to have that conversation. And so that's why they got bashed. If they had gone to the public conversation with a little bit more realistic impression of what the marketplace thought of them, they could have milked that conversation along. From a social media perspective, I don't think they made any mistakes. They tried something, it didn't work, they immediately put the kibosh on it. Yeah, it sort of spiraled virally out of control, but they wouldn't have had control over that, good or bad. So I think they've been beaten up unnecessarily over that.
Any publicity is good publicity for a company that big?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I mean, I think the reality of it is that people aren't going to stop going to buy McDonald's hamburgers because of that. I mean, the people who aren't eating them aren't going to eat them anyway. They didn't lose any customers over that, and I don't think they should lose any sleep over it.
All right. Well, thanks very much again. It was a great talk, and thanks for talking to us today.
Thanks, Eric.